Is it 823, James?
I think it's 822.
Okay, good. I like that number.
The stream I did should have been 822, and then this should have been 823, but it's been
Too
written.
late. It's been thought down.
Yeah,
The records are in stone.
Yeah.
No backseats.
June 19th, very auspicious day for many reasons. Yeah, welcome to Airship. I did a stream earlier today. I discussed the word hallucination. Ha in the Hebrew is typically it's like a little door. It's like a window. And so the word hallelujah would be a window into the luya. It's sort of like a godly window. It's a way of presenting something. And so the word hallucin, of course, Lucifer is light. So uh, the light of God is a hallucination. And when you are hallucinating, you are experiencing the light of God in a nonconformist way. That's it. Like that would be the totality of the definition of hallucination, to render the window of God in a non-majorative way, meaning that in a way where other people are not hallucinating the same thing. And that's the only definition that we have for it. And when you think about what the world really is, it's a hallucination. It makes more sense even now. And it keeps me going back to Levin's work, Michael Levin, and just that whole idea of how consciousness is sort of a coupling, a banding together. You were very equivalent to a civilization. If a bunch of people that believed in the purity of themselves as religiously persecuted and decided to charter a boat and got on that boat and went to a new land, that the moment you landed in that world, the only mud that you would have to plant your hallucination would be in each other, the other people that came on the boat with you. If they did not hallucinate the same way you did, I want you to try and picture the mental journey that they would go through coming to America, experiencing the government that was already here and having no ability to shore up their own beliefs. This is like prime assimilation. If you think about typically what happens when you enact a border policy, even though they don't explicitly say this is typically what happens is, can we indoctrinate your children? If so, we don't have a problem. And that what we did to the Native Americans was the very thing, right? As long as we can indoctrinate you guys, we're fine. You can stay. You're not even a threat. We just want your kids. And the most of the training camps were for Native American children, and the Native American children would basically, they were called schools, but they were camps. They were indoctrination camps, and the idea was all it took was time. As long as you can, as long as we can drain you of 30% of your witness among others, that's all it takes. That you It's not that you're weaning off your parents, although that certainly happens. But what's more happening is that you're weaning on a collective, and the collective isn't necessarily something that we get to decide. We don't get to decide how a squash squashes. We can only decide if we want this squash to be here and if we want to eat what it makes. Uh, Government is that. But more importantly, you are that. The parts of you that you identify with are a collection of decisions that you make, there you decide this is me and this is not me. Some of you cut your hair with want and abandon, like it's just going to fucking grow back, and you don't even mourn the loss. You like cut your hair and it falls and you throw it away. You don't bury it. You don't have a ritual for it. You don't even say goodbye. You treat it as if it's just going to reappear the next day. Shameful, I think, but it's, and all of us do this with our fingernails, our skin cells, but more importantly, our odors, our smell, our essence, and even more importantly, our work, all the things that we touch, all the things that we touch in the world are a decision's been made that we've said this is not who I am. That I can access this, but by accessing it, I'm not this. I'm not this thing. And this is difficult, but if you could unwind, where did I come up with that idea? Like, take it back, pretend that you had language the whole time, and that you could have a discussion with yourself and you could figure out, when did I decide what was me? At what point did I decide this is my boundary? You and I can easily reverse engineer this and decide that, well, it'd be easy to guess that if we could feel pain, that would be a biggie. That if I strike something and I do not feel pain from that strike, that's not me. And if I strike something and I feel pain from that strike, that is me. And this is a cheat code. We adopted this cheat code 200,000, I don't know, a long ass time ago. We adopted this cheat code. It's a pain cheat code. That which I feel is me. That which I do not is not me. And then you got sunsets. You're feeling the sunset. You're starting to notice there's something wrong here. There's something wrong here because this sunset is me. And only some of you figure that out. And you only know it's you because when you watch someone else experience the sunset, you don't they don't see it the way you do. They're missing a lot. They're missing so much that you think that they are not you. That's what you think. And so now you have this whole other first context is that which I feel pain from is me, that which I don't is not. And then sunsets and empathy, oh God. And then love, all those things come in and you're just like, fuck, who am I? And that definition suffers. And then you become an artist and you start to notice, but this book is me, this painting is me, this thing I make is me, this meal is me. And you, ultimate artist, you have kids. And you're like, this child is me. And you're losing the subtle crispness of that definition. It's gone. You never have it again. And you can atrophy that and just stick. When my dog Wiley, little cute guy, when he was really little, he decided, this is my length. I am this long. And for the rest of Wiley's life, he would sit in places where he knew that he would fit based on the measurements that he took when he was 7 months old. I can see him thinking this. So he sits in chairs that are way too small. Big. Yeah. Right. He sits in the lap that he can't fit in. And you can, if you think about this, you're watching a dog that sized themselves a long time ago and was done. It's like, I got it all figured out. I know how long and it's like, I've got the 13-foot 4-inch clearance and I've got that taped to my mirror. So when I get in the truck, no matter what bridge I go under, I know how much I can fit. It's the same exercise. You've decided who you are and who you're not. But we are waking up now. And we're part of communities. There's subtle energies in the field and you touch them. And you may not notice how important they seem. You might even feel this importance as a pulling, sort of like, I need to go be social. It's not that you have to be social. It's that you have a vital part to play because you weaved yourself into this menagerie of belief, this collective identity. And I swear to you, you're a country. Like if you broke down the agency of who you are, wouldn't be anything tangible. It would just be this backdoor handshake agreement where no one who's actually in charge is just saying they're in charge just long enough so they can all agree that this person should be in charge. And this is what pirates do. Pirates decide, look, one of us has got to lead the charge. See, he said charge. And he's like, so which one of us best embodies the pirate the most? We'll make him in charge. And then they do. And this is, this is probably closer to who we are. Like if you think about Indra, if you think about if you picture yourself as this giant, not Indra, let's go with Ganesh. You if you picture yourself as this elephant energy where you're you're a vagina and a penis at the same time. You are every creature that's ever been combined into one, and you're dancing through each of those faces. Like as you move your spine, you're just finding a different face, and the distance away from the face, it's almost like a vector species where you find kindredness in jaguar and you find kindredness in giraffe. And if you really start to unwind who you are, you're phasing in and out of all these animal totems. But they're not animal totems. I mean, they are, but they're they're only seen through the spectrum of civilization. We can only find these shadows when we look through each other. We don't have nature doesn't have the dimensional capacitance for these kinds of emotions. And so we have fabric, we have aura, we have fabric, we have song, we have smell, we have presence. We have all these different mediums specifically because there's energy that needs to be experienced that's inside that spectrum. And it's a compass of beauty if you think about it. It's a naturally built compass where we find the deepest parts because they're so intriguing, because they're beautiful. This is that peculiarity thing I've talked about before. Where if you picture what would hypnotize, what kind of device could be used to hypnotize all of humanity, almost like grabbing a human by the nape of the neck. Where could you grab a human in the PAG? What sort of experience could you grab a human and completely incapacitate them by overwhelming their system? And it would be through some sort of illusion. It would be through something that I believe that we mostly call peculiar. The closest experience I can convey to this is the rubbernecking, but it's not that. It doesn't have to feel so guilty. But when you rubberneck at an accident, that same kind of gravity, it's a gravity, is probably just peculiarity. And when you unwind what peculiar is, peculiar doesn't need to be beautiful. There's only part of the tenure of peculiar. Something might be peculiar because you thought it's beautiful or you didn't think it's beautiful, right? But it's not necessarily the spine of this thing. The peculiarity is that's the hypnotic that keeps us hooked in. And I believe that's really at the essence of like who this is when we stop separating who I am and who I'm not. Who you are is a fuse, like a fuse that's burning of peculiarity. You're following a path in a way that almost feels predestined. If you're comfortable enough to notice that it's predestined, it kind of feels that way. Because if you track your passions, you've found yourself before, you'll find yourself in the same place because you just certain things you gravitate to. And when you finally discover who you are, right, you get to a point to where you like this definition. But underneath it all, if I had a point, it's this: that if you want to unwrap who the fuck you are, I think it's peculiar. I think at the essence of every fractal that's driving us along, it's our desire to be peculiarized. That really is at the essence of what makes things grow. It's this, maybe a better word if you don't like that is an eternal, hey, what's going to happen next? I'm addicted to what's going to happen next, would be peculiar. And so the appetite for peculiar isn't necessarily love. The resounding thump, I've written about this, sorry, but it's like Nimrod brings the Tower of Babel, but he gets everyone to build it. Why does everyone build this tower? Why does everyone freely build this tower? Why? It's because it's so peculiar. You experience the same thing at a concert, at a festival, if it's a good one. You experience the same thing if you're on psychotropics. You're completely enamored in the flow state of what's next. And when you debase yourself enough back to a child, you see that. You see who you are. You're someone that will neglect sleep, cleaning yourself, eating, whatever, because you're so addicted to life that you finally just crash. Or someone just finally just has to put you down because you can't stop. You can't pull the straw out of your mouth, you know? It's that kind of thing. That's that's the closeness to who we are. I think this is what Michael Levin's talking about when he's showing you all these decoupled cells. They're running on the power of peculiarity is what it is. Pi, good to see you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I stepped off for a second there. Um, well, I don't know. I've been thinking about something involving a comment in the YouTube comments of the last Airship that might relate to this. I've been thinking about it, but somebody made a comment about, I didn't really understand it, uh, the comment actually, but something about justifying, um, talking about neoteny, like in pigs, is like talking about pigs not reaching their full maturity, which is like an extension of a juvenile state, kind of. It can mean different things, but it's just a really interesting question because I guess I didn't understand it because humans are like a prime example of neoteny. We have one of the most extended adolescent periods before adulthood, including what you've mentioned, James, about the neocortex. And so it got me thinking about in history, like what does neoteny in humans look somewhat like asexuality? Like what would it look like if you were going to extend the period? And it seems to be affected by um, environment. And I can tell you, you can look it up, but the fact is that domestication and its processes are not well understood. And you'll get, scientific answers like pick a breed that doesn't eat itself or, something like that, but they don't get to the root of the cause. And there's with pigs, like they'll talk about, having certain conditions or whatever. But I know from my experience, even though I just worked at a farm and fed pigs with weeds and stuff that I picked and old produce. But there's one thing that affects it's considered a representation of neoteny, whether or not a pig eats its young, cannibalizes. and they tend to like want to go like 7 to 9. They keep it, depending on environmental conditions, they keep it within a certain amount, just generally. But that can change, and like the thing that what the thing is that changes it, empathy. Empathy, just in my experience, just from my dealings with the pigs, since I liked them, and I don't eat pigs, but you know, they're cute and I like them, talk to them and stuff. Empathy changes it. As soon as there's a lack of empathy, it's a real struggle to get in there when piglets are born before they get, and that these aren't even like wild ones. But I guess my point is what does that um, kind of look like in humans, and what might it have looked like historically? I just think it's an interesting question, although I didn't even understand like what the person was actually like referring to. But just from my own experience, it just really got me um, thinking about that, because part of it is environmental conditions too. Like it's in the insect world. It's like,
Yeah, I was going to say that.
butterflies. You might just say, I'm not going to become a butterfly
Mhm.
because it's just too much energy for me to expend. It's an indication of a perception of hard times when that happens sometimes, when there's an extension of a juvenile state. Anyway, that's all what some musings, about it that I thought kind of might relate to different perceptions, concerning like
Yeah,
adolescence.
great stuff, Pi. Neoteny is a new word to me. I put it in chat if anyone didn't know how to spell it like I didn't. Um, and to that, there's two really things that really strike me from what you said. First of which is that it does seem that the compassion thing you're discussing would almost be the liquid hive. That a bumblebee, I don't mind us calling a bumblebee a separate entity. I don't mind that, but it's not really a separate entity, right? Like it's really a member of a hive, and it has a some sort of plasmic connection there, unless you grow white eyes. There's certain bees that do not gender properly. They deny their worker state. They deny their role, and they're like, I don't want to be a bee. They become schizophrenic and they have white eyes, and they leave the hive and never come back, and we call them broken bees, and all the bees inside call them broken bees, but we don't actually know that they're broken. Yes, they seem to die when they leave the hive, but everything dies. And we are the only people that have this weird context over which dies are considered successful, insane, and which dies are considered insane and unsuccessful. And I think the neoteny is a perfect way of looking at that, because you could argue that an orca never leaves neoteny, that it spends its entire life in a state of play, and that if you really want to understand why it does some of the really fucked up shit it does, those guys are fucked up, man. It's because of that neoteny. It's because they're just play so intense that we can't even imagine it. And that would actually give you the ability to excuse the compassion during that state. So it's almost like you could think about it like this: everything is a hive, and that the only way that we can plasmatically feel the hive is our compassion to others, and that people can go wide eyed and break the bounds of their compassion using placebo, pretending to be something else. A cop can shoot someone in the face because they did not pull over. A soldier can go to a foreign land and blow the head off of a complete stranger simply because wrong place, wrong time. And that all those are done because we enter into this play state, that we play so hard that we're capable of overcoming the compassion, the glue of society, and do fucked up shit and try and hold it together. And of course, we call that PTSD. And if anything, you could look at PTSD as just being a weak imagination. It's fucked up, right? But if you think about it this way, your ability to separate yourself from the herd would be this wide-eyed moment. And that moment would look crazy and insane to every single person, except for another bee with white eyes. And for that other bee, it would be like this beacon of, fuck, you get me. You get me. And so this is how life propagates. If you think about it, this whole rejection, reinvigoration, all of this is the only thing that's making the peculiarity fuel. It allows the perpetual motion of this giant Ruth Goldberg reveal to keep happening. And that's the hypnotic nature of that, I think, is more of a sign of how powerful it is. In other words, we don't have to recognize why we are hypnotized by something to be hypnotized by it. We don't follow the lady, follow the lady. Somewhere there's a lady. Which card has the lady? Who has the lady, right? And you're doing this 3-card Monty thing, and what you're missing is that there is an Indra dance. There's an immersion taking place where what you've really done is you've shut out the entire world with the exception of 3 cards. And you've placed the mind into a wide-eyed, pure placebic state, and things have never been simpler. Think about how simple it is. Follow the lady. Which one has the lady, right? And that's all you got to do. So even the art of playing, you're already winning, because for the first time in forever, someone's been able to come up to you and play, and you didn't say, no, I don't want to play. I don't want to play. I don't want to imaginate. I'm a white male living in Detroit. Oh, and it's like you're clinging to whatever it is. But there's certain entertainers, if they're dressed like a clown just right, that we've given ourselves permission, and we can enter into those peculiar states and drink for the first time in a long time. And I think this is the schizophrenia, because the schizophrenic doesn't get sitcoms. The schizophrenic doesn't get this opportunity to play with everyone else. It's all imagination all the time. And that would burn you the fuck out, man. I know it would, because it's almost burned me out, because sometimes I have enough power where I can imaginate for like 6 solid days. Where there's no fucking world. Are you kidding? I am the entire fucking cosmos. And that's only when I have just the right budget. It requires the right amount of fruit, the right amount of herb, the right amount of groceries, the right amount of time off. But I can facilitate and create a whole fucking bubble, and no one is going to fuck with this world. For 5 days, this is solid. And when growing up, I knew I had such a beautiful internal life. And I remember my biggest problem. I don't want to name names, but at a certain time during the day, a certain person in my family would come home, and the first thing they would do is fucking find that bubble and clobber it. And just be like, stop fucking imaginating all over the house. Stop it. Stop it. It's too much. It's too much. And we call this divorce. We call this getting fired. like this basic essence of just play really is going to define what you do for a living, who's going to tolerate you, who's going to find your peculiarities not exhausting. Right? I was always taxed for my peculiarities. I was always told, if you're going to be peculiar about this, it's going to have to cost you. That in the future, I'm going to have to eliminate your ability to be peculiar about all kinds of other things because you're being peculiar right now. And that I think that that's how most of the world just fucking works. I don't think that was just me. I literally think that's how the entire world works, because We were afraid of what's happening now. We were afraid that we were going to be pretending the shit out of being a dude living in a Republican state who's angst over the gun stock, da 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 da, and some dude's gonna walk up who just has this weird fucking fantasy going on, and they're just gonna shit all over our fantasy and ruin our game. Someone's gonna come in and say, "This is like professional wrestling. None of it's real. You fucking nut. You sound like a psychopath voting for this shit. What is wrong with you?" And that would be the same as walking up to a trans woman and saying, "Hey, man, you're a man." It's the exact same thing, guys. It's the exact same fucking thing. I get how we're insisting, no, it's not. It's completely different, but it's the exact same thing. You're looking at all of us imagining the fuck out of who we are and finding whichever one gets the least amount of flack on the street, and that's who the fuck we are. That's it. And if I stray from that, if I show up in a Hitler mustache tomorrow, there's going to be a little bit of pushback from that. If I keep the Hitler mustache for 4 days and then shave it, there's going to be a little bit of pushback from that. And I've talked to you about this before because it's not that you're curmudgeon. No one's penalizing you for being curmudgeon. They're penalizing you for changing. That's what is wrong. And if you think about the war on the trans agenda, it's a war on changing. I'm sorry, but it is. There's a steady state that gets built when I can know what you were imagining and I can just, okay, done. Yeah, he's imagining himself as a plumber. Got a butt crack, he's got a mortgage, he's got kids, he's got a van. Look at his van. He's got a van. There's a whole bunch of white shit in the back of the van that runs around. He turns corners, shit falls off. He's really good at this. No one is doubting his play. No one's coming over in the morning going, "Hey, Frank, you're not a fucking plumber. Why don't you grow the fuck up? Why don't you grow the fuck up and get a real job like Reggie, the football player over there?" Like, that's normal. That would be exactly as sane as doing it the other way. Exactly as sane as insisting, "Oh, you're going to be a philosopher? You can't be a philosopher." What do you, it's the same thing. And we're watching this rudimentary, really, really rough cut, elementary kind of battle for nothing else than the ability to fucking change. That's all we want. And careers are 7 years now. And when I grew up, a career was 30 years. In other words, the average time that you would spend imagining who you were was 30 years, and you had a pension for it. And now if you're lucky to have a job, and I mean lucky loosely, because what the fuck, right? But it's like, if you're lucky to have a job, on average, you're going to keep it 7 years. Why? Because society has given you fucking permission to fucking change. Thank God. So what you're fighting with is the fear of what it feels like when you and I are talking. We're at Astronosis. I encourage you all to come. Looks like we're going to have a meetup in the grass on the final day, but we're all sitting there talking and we're having a conversation as if we're all humans living in the world. And God forbid Lori shows up and she's dressed like a giant butterfly fairy, and we were just to like freak out over that. That we're trying to kill the world where that is just more the norm. We're trying to kill the idea that you can't just change, that you can't just come in with something different, right? And why? Because the only reason why we let you play trombone, James, is because you showed us for 15 years that you were practicing when no one was around. And that's the only reason why all of us are letting you play trombone. It's the only reason. And that's what happens with, if you're a drug dealer, same thing. If you're a podcaster, same thing. Whatever it is you do, it really comes down to this ability to imaginate and people's acceptance of that. There's not a more focused playground. If you think about it, it's like fish in water. None of us would ever notice how much we've been fighting to hold our imaginary state because we've been doing it so fucking long. We don't know. And last week I suggested to some of you, which got some backlash. I don't care. It's fine. But it's Pride Month. It was just a good point to bring it up. And I still encourage you to try it. Is I put on a pride bracelet and go wear that and feel the energy of that. Just feel the fucking energy of it because it's palatable. And that palatableness is all around you all the time. All the time. And if you don't want to do that, get in your car and take your pants off. Put your pants in the trunk and then drive. Feel that. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You're imagining that you're civilized. You're fucking imagining that you're civilized. And everyone else is imagining that they agree with you because you're wearing pants. That's it. It's the only requirement.
Yeah, I've been really thinking about the Pride Month because, several years back, well, back in my 30s, I met some of my biological family, including my brother that's 3 years younger than me. And I only met him a couple times, but we kind of look alike, and he's about 6'3", a little taller than me, but he's changed his name and had bosoms and sent me a thing on Facebook once, and I just responded with his name, Kent, with a question mark because I wasn't sure. But it was just, and he just disappeared, and I don't know where he went, and he's just never, last I knew, he worked in a sawmill on Upper Peninsula, Michigan. But I'm just saying that time, I can't help but think like if it was now, see, it was that sensitive, and he felt like what you're talking about, like there's that much of a difference now that I just wish that it would be now, because then maybe he wouldn't have been so spooked, because I don't think there was a feeling of like a support, like, I think it was probably pretty scary, and I don't know why he did it that way, but certainly there'd be a difference like if that happened now, and then maybe we'd like talk about it, but I'm just left to like think about it, that there's this 6'3", trans woman brother that looks like me and has the same voice. It's just, you can't help but think about it. So it's kind of changed my view, just like people that have people in their family, it'll change your view because you have to consider it and compassionate it to whatever degree that you can. But, I can just see, yeah, like what you're talking about, there's a huge difference. Like that would have changed the entire thing, So even though it seems like such a short period of time. Anyway, sorry to intervene, but
No, don't be sorry. No, it's great stuff, Pi. Lori, go ahead.
I just wanted to share a little thing about my childhood because this is an amazing topic when you really get to really deep dive into it. But when I was like in kindergarten, first grade, they didn't know how to motivate me, and it was like nothing they could do. Being the teacher's helper, I was like, why would I want to do that? Clean the chalkboard, erasers, no. And I remember thinking it was really stupid to do those dittos, and you had to like do all the numbers. I was like, well, I'll do the first one, and then the rest, I'll just fill in arbitrary numbers. So they didn't really know what to do because they couldn't motivate me. And I remember being spoken to about 5 or 6 years old, and they were like, well, you really have to learn to read. It's really important to learn to read because you have to get along in the world. So this is an important skill. And I said to them when I remember saying it vividly, I don't really plan on that because I'm going to be a bum and I can live in the subway and I don't have to really participate. And they just didn't know what to do then. That was it. That was just like the last thing. My mother stopped going down to the teacher conferences and they were like, I don't know what we're going to do with this one. And it's really interesting because I my if you were to test my family, what is that thing where you're geniuses or NEMSAs or NIMSAs or whatever that thing is. And I was the most successful one in a career, and I actually got a college degree. I don't know how I did it, but it was interesting that I couldn't be motivated by the consensual reality at all. And I think that's really why I am the way I am now, because I was like, I don't really think I was programmed. So that's what I wanted to share.
If you don't mind me asking, I was talking about sort of like the wide-eyed bees, my own bouts with feeling the schizophrenic comes a lot of times because I'm with people that aren't helping me imaginate to my level. I'm just
Hmm.
wondering if that rings true for you too, or has rung true for you too.
Absolutely. I was diagnosed later in life as bipolar, which I think is a compliment because I'm very, very, I mean, if it was the psychiatrist was like, well, it was more like because I had anxiety because I didn't couldn't really fit in and my circadian rhythms are different than other people's and I'm not a hive mind person. So but it's because I'm really, really creative. And so the psychiatrist looked, and it's a mild case. So the psychiatrist looked at my website and he said, oh, I know. He said, oh, you're bipolar. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll take the diagnosis. And I took an off-label anti-seizure medicine or something for a little while to, and then I went and did my Peruvian journey and did ayahuasca, and I haven't been on anything since, but I think that the world doesn't know what to do with a person that's super creative. I just don't know what to do. And there's
Yeah.
nothing that can motivate you to follow the rules of what is so you can see through the rules already when you're super young.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we want community. We want to follow. Let's follow some rules, man. But are there cool ones? Are there
Yeah.
are there cool rules? Because we're looking for the coolest rules in the world. We're all for rules. We want community. This is why I think the schizophrenic is just it's just you, Lori. It's me. It's just
Yeah.
us suffocating. And
Yeah.
I
through
think
that
you hit on it,
time.
Lori, that I think that part of it is that you don't plan too far in the future. Like I didn't plan like for college or very far in the future like some people do. And I think that's part of it. And when you don't, like you're saying, I'm just going to be a bum. It's like, I was kind of that way too. Like where I'm just like, well, I'm just going to refuse to like it's like, what do you mean? I wasn't even thinking about that. Why are you making me think about the future at a certain point in time? That was enough to ruin my, just to like demand that I, somehow, and part of it was because my family, uh, when we lived out in the country, they were from the city, and to them, this big wild 88-acre forest was like a park, but they knew it was wild, but they were happy to just have us be gone all day. But then when you came home for dinner, then it was just like that's where you had to show that you're not wild. Like you can't, no creative talk, no, like only that, show that you can hover like in this area. And it was just a total squasher, you know? And then like things like even like eating with a certain fork and stuff. Like my mom would like, if I'd use my left hand and eat continental style the way I prefer, just she would like whack me like with the with the sharp edge of the knife on my knuckles, because that's what it took to like make me pay attention apparently. But
Yeah.
but I'm just saying these types of like things, I had experiences like that, that's an example. But I relate to what you're saying about, because I think, I can't remember, but I'm sure I said things like that, like, I'm just going to do this, or just, kind of a refusal to, you're kind of dancing around. And then some people might start to like say, well, what's wrong with this person? Or, lucky for me, I was in a kind of a rural area, so nobody thought to really think those things, and there was all rich people around, so nobody's going to think they're crazy, since they're all crazy.
I distinctly remember one of my survival tactics, about the only thing that worked, was that if I was to transiently move from group to group to group enough, I could still be as enthusiastic as I wanted to all day because I was freshening my exposure to different people who weren't tired of it. And so they didn't have enough time to say you're bipolar, which really was just their defense at just trying to cope with me. And because of the society we live in, we actually don't understand that being told bipolar, being called bipolar is someone telling you, you have depth that is beyond me and it scares me. So I'm going to call you bipolar. And that's just true. It's okay. I don't mind us having a word, but I just wish that we understood what that really meant. There's no statistical diagnostic that shows you what a human is supposed to polarly operate between. That is a DSM rating. And the same DSM manual said anyone that was a homosexual, for example. I mean, there's so many things, so many things, but just all these things were just mental disorders. So any kind of advancement at all, even spiritual people right now are being referred to by atheists as genetic deviants. They have a certain gene, the God gene, and they're infected by this and things like that. This is what I mean by it's all imaginary. I mean that in the realest way possible. It's all imaginary. This is the realest thing I've ever said. It's all imaginary. And so people are playing doctor just like we were kids. When you were a kid and you decide to play doctor, the one who's doctor decides they know everything, don't they? And they're like, okay, I know it all. Oh, you have a problem. Two things are required for you to play doctor. A, I have to know everything. And B, you have to have a problem. So that isn't this, let's take it back. This is peculiar. When you watch these pieces come out on stage, when you watch the Heyoka clown on a unicycle come out, and the idea is, I know everything and I have a problem, you are engaged. Follow the lady, follow the lady. Which card has the lady? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the hypnotics of it. And we find each other in the hypnotics of it. You imagine your favorite band and no one's ever heard them. And you're trying to tell someone, you're trying to share, you're trying to make them a tape. And when they play it, they don't hear what you hear. They don't hear it. You would go fucking insane. You would go insane. And this insanity, I think, is the plasma of who you are. The gestalt of who you are is so much more Osirian. Osirian is what I'm saying. Osirian, meaning that this is what I started with. This rumor that I am separate because I feel pain here, but I don't feel here, has been a justification of the larger picture, which is that you are Osirian. You are wormholed into everyone else through a collective imagination, hallucination, and that all of us are seeing the Ha through this lucent body, the chromosome, the light body of who you are, is witnessing the hallucination of the world. The language could not be more revealing. It's kind of beautiful. So your immunity, your immune system is the same thing. We've talked about this before, but leprosy, probably just people started thinking highly of themselves. And eventually they just watch themselves more. Why? Because I like myself. I wash myself. I'm gonna, what do you know? I'm cleaning out my toes. Who knew? Hey Frank, you don't have leprosy. I know. It's like the dandruff shampoo, you know. But Frank, you don't have leprosy. It's like, I know. I use Head and lepers and shoulders, you know. It's the same thing. We apply love and that love grows. And right now, I just been tripping out so much over this, but if you're going to be a certain gender in the world, you're going to ignore a lot. And if you switch genders, you're going to ignore a whole other set of things. And if you don't pick a gender, you're not going to ignore either of those things. You are going to have this fluid perspective that doesn't involve, I must cover my shoulders because I will be scary. This is what man says to himself. I must cover my shoulders because I scary. Me scare people. Me must hunch over. When me go to dance, me occupy small space that only 3 feet in diameter because I don't want to scare people. And you've been imagining that so fucking long that all of us are just peanut characters, just peanuts characters of who we truly are. Like just little, like bopping, dancing animations of who we are. Just like 7-frame animations of why? Because these are the 7 frames that all of us have approved that we can fit in and be ourselves. That's what's happening. And if we look at all the angst, this is what I think is happening. I should rephrase it. I don't want to make my hallucination too powerful. But this is what's happening. And instead of it being all this angst and piss and pain and death and torture and evil, it's just fucking blooming. It's just what a flower does. It rips itself open at the very heart of where you would think it would never rip itself open. And it produces something that's never been heard of. The most insane colors, vulnerabilities are exposed. The most delicate parts of this thing are now sticking out in the open, begging for some foreign insect to come and land and coat its inner essence with its knees. How the fuck do you explain that to a stalk? That's what's going to happen. You don't, man. You don't. You don't even tell the stalk. You don't even tell them. You don't. And while the stalk is bitching about traditionalism the whole time, you compassionate them, you thank them because this is what got you there, and you bloom anyway. You do it anyway. And you know it's going to hurt. You know it. That's why I think we're breaking ground, like Pi's friend. I personally think that these are just warriors, Pi. These are psychonaut, shamanic warriors that knew what was necessary, that they knew that they had to pile drive themselves through this vernacular. They had to fucking punch through like a sound barrier. They weren't doing this because it's comfortable. I think they were doing this because they had a extra sensory perception of where we needed to go. And they're like, fuck this place. I will not have another child growing up in this 7-framed bullshit world. And they pull the trigger. If you look at everyone that's going through the trans violence, I'm talking about the self-mutilation. I'm also talking about the other people attacking him. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as people ripping, just like the Mayan cultures I've showed you these pictures about, where we picture this idea of man being this thing that's inside this skin, that's inside this other skin, that's inside this other skin. Remember all those? I showed you this Zobekli not Gobekli Tepe, but Pepe Zepi anyway, I'm not gonna think but this Mayan god that hangs skin on himself. He's just showing you these layers, these essence of who we are, but more importantly, the sacrifice that it takes, that we have to turn each of these people inside out to give ourselves this new kind of birth. So we reject Priapus, then we raise Priapus, then we shame Priapus. Then even now, if you look at all the pride stuff that's happening now, isn't this just Priapus? Isn't this just the essence of that early god, that early talisman of Abraxas, of the sacred penis and the sacred vagina and the combination, but more importantly, the peculiarity and the weirdness, the religious wars that we go through? Half of the theists in the world are mutilating the genitals of girls, and the other half the theists in the world are mutilating the genitals of boys, and it's all normalized. Lori, go ahead.
Whoa, that was pretty deep. This is pretty funny. Maybe it's funny. I just had a interaction with, a most amazingly beautiful on the external physical, what physical beauty of a woman would be. And so she's looking at me and wanting to engage, but doesn't know how to engage, um, because on the inside, she doesn't feel like she's beautiful. And she plays this role of all of this toxic femininity, like a way to use your voice, a way to get attention. And I'm just kind of observing basically. And I had on a dress, and I don't shave my legs. And so she reached down and grabbed hold of my calf and started rubbing my calf, saying, "Oh, this feels really good." And I was like, it felt really strange to me because I guess only men are supposed to have hair on their legs, not women. And I said to her, "Well, she said, "Well, I have no hair on my legs," as she lifted up her gorgeous leg and showed everyone her gorgeous leg. And it was like, I was like, "Well, I don't understand really what's going on," but she asked why she doesn't have hair on her legs. And I said, "Well, I don't know why you don't have hair on your legs. I know it's a sign of good circulation if you can grow hair on your legs." But I said, "I highly recommend it because if you ever tried it, you have so much more sensation in the wind when it reaches and moves your antenna on your legs around. It feels like fantastic. You have so much more feeling." So I I get it. I guess it's like I've been playing in this trans kind of role to like see like how are we not wanting to be objectified in our gender, how we then play this objectification and then get really angry when people objectify you, which this is what she was, kind of playing, and then telling these horrible stories about being this victim. And I was like, I don't really believe in the victim thing. So why did you pick something like that? I mean, well, it was pretty interesting. But the leg thing was the hair on the leg thing was a real good experiment. So um, I I don't know. Just wanted to share that. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, I could read into that so many ways. In fact, we might. But since Mel has her hand up, I'm gonna call on her. Hey Mel, what you got?
Hello. I want to share something about gender, something really personal. It's I think how I began. Um, um, I am the second child. Um, I have an older sister. I was born in 1966. My mom was very young. She was 9, almost 20 when she had me. Like 3 weeks later, she turned 20. When she was pregnant with me, I mean, she always said that with my sister, she wasn't expecting anything, boy or girl, she didn't care. But I was the second child, and in her mind, I was going to be a boy. And whenever she had like a pain somewhere, everybody would tell her, "Oh, it hurt you on this side. It's gonna be a boy," and uh, she didn't carry me like my sister, she said. So she was convinced I was going to be a boy. So she bought everything, like the clothing for a boy, like everything light blue with these little colors, pointy colors, not rounded. So in her mind, I was going to be a boy. She was 19. So so when I was born, she was shocked and she cried a lot and she rejected me totally, totally. And she told me the story. I mean, she told this story so, I mean, so freely, and it was sometimes very annoying because she would tell this story in front of everybody. And I was there and I was like, okay. And and she told me, she told everybody, not just me, um, that the nurse that was there was really nice. And I was named, she picked a name for me, and my aunt came from another town in Algiers. I was born in Algiers, in the capital. My aunt came and she learned that my mom was kind of rejecting me. So she came to speak with her, and she even named me. And she gave me, my name was really not a name very, um, very popular in Algeria at that time. And it was really, very original, let's say. So my mom liked it, and it's like my aunt named me. It wasn't even my mom. So even though she picked a name for me, and this is so, I am so emotional right now. And that was, and then the nurse, she told me I was crying because I was hungry, and the nurse told her, look at her, she's really hungry, you have to feed her. And then when she started feeding me, she bonded with me. That's what she told me. She bonded with me when she started feeding me, breastfeeding me. So and she treated me like a boy all my life. I mean, she treated me like a boy in my childhood. When I turned 5 years old, four or five, I had long hair. I mean, I had like a little girl. And then one day she took me and my sister. I mean, she didn't escape from that, my sister. She took, I mean, we were really nicely, our hair was done like every day. And then she took us to the photographer. We took some portraits, and then from the photographer directly to the hairdresser, and our hair was chopped like boys. It's like, and at that time our brothers were born. We're really, really close in age. And so we looked like our brothers, my sister and I. And when everybody asked her why, she said, because she's too skinny, talking about me, because I was really like a spider. I was really, really skinny. And it's too skinny, and her hair is taking all her strength. I don't know how she got that. And my sister was chubby, so I don't know why she was saying that. And then she said, it's the 70s and the pixies are in, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I had my hair, I didn't have any say in it. And my mom called me my missed boy all my childhood. Mon garçon manqué. En français, in French, it's mon garçon manqué. It's my almost boy, my almost boy. So Amel, c'est un garçon manqué. Amel, c'est un garçon manqué. I heard it all my life. And then we were on vacation. We were in Paris, and I was 13, and I had my period. And we were at my mom's friend's house, and my mom's friend didn't. I mean, she threw like a little party for me. And it was very embarrassing. And she bought a cake and everybody was there, giving me congratulations and flowers, blah, blah. And my mom told me, congratulations, now you are a woman. And that was so a freedom for me. She gave me a ticket to take my femininity back. I told her from now on, you're not going to cut my hair, because she was the one taking us to the hairdresser for the haircut. I said, I'm going to take back who I am. So I took back who I wanted to be, a girl. And I became a girl from there. I just became who I was. I was 13. She never cut my hair again. She never approached me. And I did with my hair. I had them curly, short, long, whatever I wanted with this hair. And when my daughter was born, I did not want to cut her hair. It was for me a trauma, cutting the hair. And my daughter told me once, she said, Mama, you love my brother more than me. And I said, how is that? Tell me, explain to me. She said, because you cut his hair and you don't cut mine. And I was just traumatizing my daughter in reverse. I mean, and I was like, how do I learn to be a mother? This is how. I mean, they taught me how to be a mother. And she was 7 when she told me that. And I had to cut her long, beautiful, curly hair. I did 5 braids and I just cut them. And because she wanted. And my hand was shaking, and I still have her braids and I still have them. I can't cut them. I can't throw them away. I mean, I still have them in a piece of cloth. And voilà, this is the story of my life and how I was, not the story of my life, I mean, the story of my childhood, and how the gender thing was really heavy in my life, because I wasn't allowed to be a little girl. I was supposed, even though I was, I mean, she would get us dresses and all this, but the hair was something really horrible. We looked like 4 boys. I mean, it's really terrible. And my mom was very feminine, beautiful and feminine, so feminine. And she denied it. She denied my sister and I this femininity when we were little girls. We couldn't be little girls like feminine little girls, you know. And but I have a temperament of it, so of a tomboy. So it built my very masculine side, because I had 2 younger brothers, and we had family around. So I have a lot of cousins. I don't have a lot of cousins, girls, but boys, yes. So I built my very masculine side, I think, and then I gained my feminine side when I was a teenager, and from then on I think I have both very strongly, and I like my both sides. And for a long time I wasn't happy with my mother about that, but I understand that she but maybe unknowingly helped me a lot, because I feel very strong now, really. Voila, the story. Thank you.
That's a great share. Thank you, Amel. Seriously. Thank you so much. I was wondering how you felt about this, honestly. I don't know why. I just did. I mean, I just wondered how you were taking some of the things I've been saying lately. And I I don't I've never identified. I'll say it now. I do identify as trans now, just because the last 3 weeks of what I've been going through, just mentally, just more about psychologically. But just for what it's worth, I've never once considered ever being into that category, simply because it's never been about sex for me. Never been about that. It's never had a desire to be like, oh, I want to have sex with a certain gender. I'm not allowed to. It's never even really felt the whole like one is more shameful than the other too, though, because all that has been such a small token about this much larger thing for me, which was that as I grew older, there were things I wasn't allowed to do anymore. And I didn't understand necessarily why. I, I had just the luck of just some amazing timing with meeting different people in my life, but I was heavily involved in the theater when I was young, like on a big production level. I found the energy of the theater to be one of the most palatable, creative, nourishing places I've ever been, hands down, without any kind of like debate. The functional equivalence of creating a stage that has a temporal thing that's going to showtime creates a vortex that frankly cannot be reproduced anywhere else. It is a special place. And I felt the pressure of, if I want to stay in this realm, I'm going to have to learn to suck dick. I'm telling you, that's just what I felt. That I felt that because I wasn't gay, because I didn't have a desire for a what I thought was a perverted experience, that I wasn't proving myself as a doper. Please hear this, because I swear this is true. That I wasn't proving myself as a doper like Lance Armstrong. I wasn't saying that I wanted it more than anyone else. I didn't want to have to break my prudishness about my own sharing of sexuality with people. I didn't like that part. To me, I would lose myself by exposing that vulnerability and putting it on the outside of who I was. And so that never worked for me. And I noticed that along the way, I wasn't going to be able to be in theater. You could say, oh, James, that's just all self-created, but it's not true. The fact is that other people in theater sense that you're not willing to dope, and they don't want you there. They don't want you there. You are not elite. And it's the same thing that happens if you're going to be in the Tour de France, if you're going to be in Hollywood, if you're going to go to Washington, D.C. The theater is a scarcity. It's a very scarce place, meaning there's not a lot of those things around. There's not a lot of pockets of energy where you can feel enthusiastic and fucking alive, and you can put on whatever you want. You can take off whatever you want. You can take as serious or as not serious, whatever you want, because they're all fucking costumes. And no one's going to get judged because you had the nerve to change costumes 5 minutes ago. That's what people don't like. The curmudgeon man is fine. That's just Bob. He's a curmudgeon, but we love him. That's fine. It's the changing. Curmudgeon cannot walk in. Do you know what happened in A Christmas Carol when fucking Ebenezer Scrooge got nice? Do you know what happened? The fucking book ended. The entire story ended because you cannot have a character that changes. You cannot have an imaginarium where we just get to change like that. If you're going to change, it's going to have to fucking hurt. Or if you want this, you're going to have to dope to get it. And what I think is happening is that this new word Pi taught me, neoteny,
Yeah.
that neoteny is the flower. Our puberty, I'm all for puberty, especially after a Mel story. I have no beef with puberty, but I'm telling you that there's another flower, and it's neoteny. It's this prepubescent state where the hermaphroditic natures of creativity themselves are just simply unhinged, unfettered. And that world is fun as fuck. I miss that world. And I was called bipolar because I insisted that that world was better. That's why. And I went around expecting to find someone else that was lit. In every fucking room I went into, I was like, which one of you is lit? And the answer is fucking nobody. A lot of the time, the answer was no, not all the time. Definitely not. I definitely met people. More people have been lit than I've met that I haven't been. I'll say that way. I've definitely been lit through this world, but noticing how scarce shit like this was, theater, quicksand, fucking horses, right? Like all these cool shit. It's pirate maps, treasure maps, anything at all involving timers or like some sort of like bomb. None of that. When it does happen, people freak the fuck out about it, and everyone can even fucking handle it anymore. So we've gotten so far away from that natural state. And I get why, because we're fucking shamus, man. You let us free range play. We're going to go to foreign lands and torture and fucking kill and set places on fire and insist that it's because we're the good guys. That's what we're going to do.
Well, yeah, the whole neoteny thing is considered integral with the whole little understood idea of domestication. And so humans are such a extreme example of it. It just kind of begs the question if that's a mechanism of, controlling a herd, so to speak, because that's what it's mostly, most of the research and thing is concerning, how domestication occurs.
Yeah.
And so,
And
you know,
that would be the only responsibility. In other words, it makes sense that so many are focused on that.
yeah, but there is that I had a run-in with the theater, just all based on my prepubescent state of like being 13. And my best friend Will and I both liked this girl, Rosie Kelly, and she wanted to go to this theater tryout at this community theater. And we didn't even have TV, so we didn't know what it was. And uh, they have this huge community playhouse, kind of a fancy one. And so all this person did was like have us like go around and do these funny like motions and like be ridiculous kind of, and I'm like, what can this possibly have to do with theater? And so then she picks me and my best friend like to play it was Rip Van Winkle, and to play the lead role of Rip Van Winkle and Derek Van Bummel, the peg leg. and so because of Rosie Kelly, we did it, and it was like a traumatizing experience. That the opening night, it was in front of 6,000 people, and I just remember standing there like looking at the lights, and that's when I realized I couldn't be in the theater, because it was just like, I mean, you have to immerse yourself so much. I just realized it's like I can't do this. I don't even remember. Like, I thought maybe I didn't remember my lines, but I don't even remember saying stuff. And I'm just like, uh, that kind of opening yourself, like you said. I didn't feel like being around like it's like I don't belong. Like it's like my own prudishness. It's like I can't do that. I don't know. I just have a privateness that doesn't allow me to consider doing that. But I had the one time, in front of this huge crowd, and I had no idea. And it was like 3 nights, and it was just like a big community playhouse thing that I didn't really know what it was. But I can kind of relate to that from that experience, anyway.
Yeah, there's a peculiarity that's in a situation like that, because time is important. The same feelings in the kitchen, by the way. I love working in the kitchen. Same thing. Time is important. And you're finally away from this facade that time is meaningless, because most of us pretend that it's meaningless, that we have plenty of time, that we're invincible. But when you walk into a kitchen or a newspaper or a theater, you find this, I'm not saying those are the only ones, but you find this attention to time. And our placement of that attention and time is really just our compressing meaning into space, right? And that really is what gives us the nights of the theater that I remember. Nothing have to do with the audience. I remember opening the back door to the theater and having the rush of the night air that I haven't seen in days, because we've been inside this theater where you're in charge of lights and sound, but having this universe that's been outside this other world the whole time, and having that cold air rush into me as I'm in some ridiculous costume that really is meaningless too. But it's just those feelings, the feeling of being nervous, or the feeling of watching a ballerina that I'm never going to see again, watching the back of her head as she's like preparing to go on stage, and watching how cool and calm and collected and passive she is, and then all of a sudden springing into this new life right while she's in this thing, and then having her stop and come back, and only me being able to see this slumped version of her too. It's just, oh, it's so captivating. It's so peculiar. And I think at a younger age, you might mistake what these feelings are, what they're about, and what they mean, and what you have to do to get them, and all the other things that come into it, you know. But I think it's the only thing that kept me sane younger, was noticing that I could breathe, I could find this oxygen, but it was gonna be compressed into these little moments. And when they're here, you better be on fucking point, James, because this is your only time to drink. It's your only time. It's the only time to take a breath before you're pushed back under again. And you have to go through this wormhole until you find, your own place where you can, do these things. Lori, go ahead.
I really relate to this theater thing. I think life is a theater, and I look at what you do, James, every time you expose yourself, like you're in the real life theater and you're putting yourself on stage. And so I remember when the Black Lives Matter and they were doing all the marching on the university campuses. And I decided that I had already made a freak flag. So I had already designed a pirate flag, and it had wholeness on it. It had all kinds of things, and also had rainbow. I had gotten all this rainbow ribbon, and it was hanging off, and I had I made during 2020. I made a bird mask, so I was wearing this bird beak, and I did a Facebook Live, um, waving my flag with my bird beak. I think I was saying all lives matter or something. I don't remember what I was doing, but it was scary. It was like I was on a life stage and I was doing something that was super radical. And of course, the person that I cared the most about caring about what I was radically doing watched me do that. And, you know, I got the biggest rejection. It was my daughter. And and I'm really glad I did it. I think it just came up recently because I think it was in June when that happened. And and it was like putting yourself on that Facebook Live, like a theater stage, and being super like vulnerable doing it. I mean, I'm still not able to do that. So Pi was like relating. I'm like, you're just like this, like um easier just to walk around and as a stranger in a crowd, but to have all that attention on you. It's yeah, I would like to get better at it. But I think you have to get okay with being rejected. And so yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
think
that's
we're oh, sorry.
no, go ahead, bye. It's okay.
Oh, it was just making me think of, like we're all, like you said, on stage and we just find our place. And with me, it was playing in a band, like, but bass, like where I'm in the back and I'm not like the front guy. That was my level of, where I'm like, I can, I mean, I'm still on stage, but I'm kind of in the back. So it's a little different, but then you still get the experience. And I think,
Yeah.
or, you can find it doesn't have to all be anonymity, like you just find your spot, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the concept of coming out is misunderstood on if you fundamentally only have two gears, you're going to think coming out means you sexually have genital thing and you want to genitally sexualize yourself in front of and you think that's what coming out means. Same way a rapist would think that's what sex is. It's the exact same thing. So when you think about what coming out really is, it's all of us having the ability. This is the key. We have the ability to create a stage the moment that we're ready to expose ourselves to the stage and feel the burn of that. Because what I think is happening, what I think is hurting the pride movement the most is the insistence that we first need to paint a world where no one's going to be judged, because there's no way to imaginate effectively if you don't have that judgment. We want to practice holding a vibration of being something directly in line in the sight of someone who thinks we're not. That's what we want.
I had an interesting reaction or interaction at the co-op where there's a woman my age and has like a drag queen son, and she really wants to celebrate Pride Month, to celebrate her son. And she's like, her husband's a university professor, and they're kind of in all this stuff. But she's a very nice person and gets me olive oil from Sparta. So she's very gracious to do that for me. But anyway, it's kind of well, it's just this person at the co-op. Her name's Mar. She's kind of a asexual. She goes by they. She's very, will voice her opinion, and she's like, this Pride Month should be a protest. And so her and Christy got into it a little bit, about she wanted to celebrate her son's, she goes, it's a celebration, and they kind of got into it a little bit, got a little snippy with each other, I think. And, Mara's kind of like she wears a mask all the time, still insists on wearing it. And, she's nice. I like talking to her. She's interesting. But I should say they is interesting because they goes by they. Is that how you say it grammatically correct? They goes by they, so that way you're never wrong. But anyway, yeah, she thought it should be a protest. And so she's like a prime example of, some of the things, in the trans, and, she's her own version of things, but that I don't even actually fully know the depth of. But I see her a lot, and she voices her opinion a lot, which I like, and she doesn't seem to mind if I voice my opinion. So we have that in common.
Yeah, the I don't think a lot of you guys are gonna like this because I think that the pronoun thing has been bastardized by the egregore itself. So it's you don't really get to like really just look at it as just like a piece of humanity, unless you look at this analogy, which I think is very, very apropos. Sorry for precursoring this. But what I want to say is this. I swear to you, a long time ago, a dude was sitting around a fire going, that guy or caveman want me call him Bob. Me not understand what, me giving a separate name for every person out there now? And I think it's the exact same thing. That you're looking at an emergence that simply just doesn't fit in a binary the exact same way that a long time ago a caveman came up with the idea of, hey, me you call me Bob, me Og. Me Og, me not caveman, me Og, me special caveman, me special caveman named Og. And that all the other cavemen would be like, what the fuck, dude? Well, you're special now? Oh, you're a big, oh, so now we have to memorize that your name's Og. It's the same thing. No one's asking you to memorize any. I know there are some people asking you this, but I never told you to listen to them. You're never going to listen to them anyway. So stop giving them so much importance. You're just watching the egregore kind of like smack itself because it wants your attention. It just wants to liquefy hate like that a lot. That's just what happens at the end. If you come back to it, really at the essence of it is people just want you to know them. That's what I think's going on. People just want you to know them. And I don't need you to understand the hermaphroditic sides of me for me to feel valid. And I know that we're living in a world that's saying that this person wants to feel valid and they're only going to feel valid if you do so and so. And I want you to know that's just mind control. That's all it is. There's only one reason why you would use someone's pronouns. You know why? It's because you got to know them. I think that's the only reason why. The only reason why you would have a burden is the same burden that we had back when fucking Zog came out and said, me identify as Zog. You call me Zog. And the first time we heard that, I was like, that's fucking insane. And the repercussions were huge. But you know what? We fucking made it. We we fucking made it. Turns out each of us can have our own name. And you know what? We didn't even stop there because one day we are like, no, me not Smith. Me John Smith. You call me John Smith. Me no longer just blacksmith. Me blacksmith named John. What do you mean you're John? What the fuck is that? It's like, it's my name. What do you mean fucking name? You don't you're a Smith. Why do you need a name? Me special Smith. Oh, fuck that. It's the same thing. You're watching the emergence of personality, and the only satisfaction you owe is to yourself. That I seriously, if you care about someone and you notice that they see themselves through the pronoun of something else, the only motivation that you need to change is just your heart. The only reason why you would do that is because it felt good to be nice to them. It should be the only motivation for anything, because ultimately that always wins. Every one of us, the people that hate gay people haven't met a gay person yet that they care about. That's all. The second you do, the second you meet your family or you're this or you're that, and you're like, I really love this person. Why are we shitting on gay people? And you don't even understand. That's the only time when you're like, oh, because fucking psychopath. That's why. And I don't want to be a psychopath anymore. All the motivation is inside of you. None of the motivation is from some other exterior group or some other kind of activist nation or some other kind of like specter phantom that's going to call you racist if you don't do something, right? Those motivations are so 1950s. Like they're just so not even tangibly stick. It's hilarious to hear them sometimes. But we're living in a world that still takes this stuff seriously. James, good to see you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, nice to see you guys too, as always. Just sitting here with the idea of like the hallucination keep component imagination. And then I had read that thing in that book and put it in the Patreon where the greatest tool to imagination is imitation. So then you have like the world imitating each other to try and collective this or to collective hallucination. But then also found it interesting that in restaurants, because you brought up the idea of restaurants, but in restaurants too, they actually strip that verbiage from us, like probably in I can't remember 2012. I can remember where they when during trainings they would say not never to say like approach the tables to say how are you guys doing or how are you because that's like was a normal kind of approach. How are you guys doing? And so that was like a no. You weren't supposed to do that anymore. You were supposed to refer to it like how are you all doing, like not to be gender specific. So I thought that was interesting because I didn't even correlate it until just now in this conversation to where I was trained back on that like some years ago. And you also said something earlier about the plumber not being ostracized or like made fun of in this version of the hallucination because if he's got all the proper gear to do so, then he gets the okay to be in society. And then in Mario, the two brothers, they want to be plumbers in the imaginary world and they're being made fun of to be a plumber. I don't know why, but I just thought I'd bring that one into it. And I
That's
think that's
good.
all I
Good
got.
catch. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
two different plasmas on either side of the curtain trying to fight their way
yeah.
right through the other side. That's
Yeah,
a
I
good
was like,
catch, man.
that's so crazy. Yeah, I was thinking that. But yeah, this whole idea of the hallucination, imagination, imitation, it's just like all, yeah, like corresponding to, this little tapestry of reality or whatever.
Well, I'm not saying you guys asked for it or even need it because I think you guys are pretty powerhousey, like in your own huge ways. But one of the reasons why I do what I do and don't just do a live stream, and I've been criticized a lot on why do you always do air streams? Why do you always do airships? I mean, is because of the opportunity for witness. I personally just think it's a really valuable tool that we have, especially if I curate it. And even though I get in trouble for curating it sometimes, I want quality witness here. And when we have that here, it gives us an opportunity to feel that essence of the stage and grow from it. I don't know of a better tool to keep you engaged
I noticed
because
there's,
it engages me. Go ahead, bye.
oh, I did notice that there's a weird encouragement for you to only like do one-on-one interviews or live stream more and like sometimes not to do this or like, just maybe I'm taking it wrong sometimes, but I sense that sometimes people's comments are like, as close as they're willing to come to saying like, don't do Airship without saying, because they're not going to do that because they probably realize that you wouldn't care for that or probably have something to say about it. But, I just get the sense that maybe people are offended by it in some way. Like maybe it makes them feel a little uncomfortable that you do it. And I don't know why that is. Why would that be?
Well,
Like what?
Like exclusion.
I have a theory, but go ahead, James. Was that you? What?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was thinking right away, like just exclusion from feeling excluded, I guess, like outcast, even though they're in the group, they're like, hey, why can't I be a part of that? Maybe that's part of it. And then I'm not sure where James was gonna go with it, but that's what I thought right away.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly. I think there's a lot of validity in that. This might be too falutant, but here's what I think it is. I really think that the pinnacle of what we understand entertainment to be had to come from a place where there's a audience and an entertainer, and that the entertainer is objectively placed in a parabola position, and then the dish is the audience placed somewhere else. And there's nothing wrong with this model at all. But the internet has given us the opportunity, in my opinion, to make something more Pythagorean, meaning something more where all of us are included in some way. And so I just naturally gravitate to that because I love the energy of it. It's the energy of it that keeps me engaged. And so having the interactions of it is really what it takes for me to stay invested, because I'm not going to be able to paint a phantasm story that has enough peculiarity in it where it keeps enough people saturated purely in those things, because I think I would have to put more doping into those stories. I would have to tell you, not you guys, but I would have to tell the audience more about how everything's on fire. No one's going to survive. Maybe you and I will, but only if you fucking tune in and stay tuned. And that is a peculiar nature, the same way that when I grew up, I was like, why are you watching this program called Guiding Light? And you're listening to someone explain why this soap opera is captivating, and you're watching it and you're just like, oh, trying so hard to get into this. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And that's how I feel about Trump, QAnon, the world's a simulation, or the everything's a mud flood, or whatever it is. And I'm guilty too. I don't mean to separate myself, but I can only find a certain saturation that I can have a certain interest that keeps me really, really into it. And it's hard. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for me. I mean, I'm not saying for anyone, just for me it is, because it's blurring the lines between philosophy and entertainment. I don't always have my priorities straight. I'm not really as much on the entertainment side. And I don't like that about myself. I think that there's very good in entertaining, just so you know. I do not like this side of me that's like, no, you will give them the details and they will. And I don't like that about me. I don't think you guys need all the details sometimes. In fact, sometimes I think I'm showing off because I want to make sure you know how hard I work. It's kind of fucked up. I don't like that. I'm just telling you, I look in the mirror and I'm like, I don't like that. It's tricky. And I have to remind myself constantly that it's a place of belief. I was just telling this to Renee because I'm watching other guys do well, and I'm catching myself because I'm like, and what's amazing to me is that I'm sitting here bitching about someone's ability to hold a story that brings more people in than me. How dare I be mad at that? Right? Like, how dare I be ashamed or jealous or mad at that? This is like the most powerful liquid in the world. Why am I dissing on this? Just because someone does it better than me? And you know, I see these things all the time. It's a real struggle. A lot of it's helping me unwind some of my own childhood stuff. You know, I'm embarrassed that you guys have to watch it sometimes, but it's like legit, and it ties into all these things. Your ability to hold attention, your ability to provide a peculiar nature versus your wanting to feel saturated. That's the debate. And I'm not always on the right page of that, you know. Um, it's it's the whole thing's fascinating. Like the whole thing, the whole the whole journey of it. Every day, not knowing what I should do, how I should do it, what I'm going to try today, what I'm not going to try today. It's very attentive. Keeps me very attentive. I'll put it that way. So, well, thank you, Nate. I feel the same way about you. Anyone got any more words here before we sign out?
I just wanted to say I think you have a pretty good improv kind of style and banter that's, you know, it's good and it's natural. And I think that when you have that, it's best to have the material that you care about, I think it works. I think it's, and so, I didn't mean to, like, I was implying that there was like a criticism, but it's also a commendation of your, people really enjoy it and they are engaged and everything. And look at all the that interview. Look at all the views on that interview and the
What the fuck was
comments.
that about? I know,
Yeah,
right?
and people were saying like they were suddenly you were in their feed and it like opened up some kind of a thing there, that's kind of interesting. So I was just, I was looking through the comments just because I found it to be interesting, and I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, one guy called me a white supremacist in there. And that's what I mean. It was like hilarious. It was just like, oh, is that where we're at now? Is that what you're doing? Oh, look at you. You're cute. Look how cute you are. Here's White Slave Matter. You should watch this. You forget sometimes you live in the. By the way, this whole idea of like Rapunzel, you realize that you're going to build a tower